All right, our first question is what can be inferred from the passage? And this is the passage. They passed me by, one after the other, my teachers, my friends, the others, some of whom I had once feared, some of whom I had found ridiculous, all those whose lives I had shared for years. There they went, defeated, their bundles, their lives in tow, having left behind their homes, their childhood. They passed me by like beaten dogs with never a glance in my direction. They must have envied me. The procession disappeared around the corner. A few steps more, and they were beyond the walls of the ghetto. So, again, what can be inferred? And it's asking us specifically about Ellie. Our options are that he is heartbroken over seeing his community members leave, that he is secretly grateful that is not being forced to leave, that he is in shock and doesn't quite understand what's happening, or that he's angry that his fellow community members are being treated unfairly. Now, for the most part, all of these things could be true. So, our job here is to look directly back at the text and use the clues that are presented in there to figure out which is the best option. Our first option we know is heartbroken. He must be heartbroken to some degree, but there's nothing in here that's talking about his reaction and his level of sadness. So, we're not going to say that. The second option, he's secretly grateful that he's not being the one forced to leave. What it says in the text is that they must have envied me, but he doesn't talk about being secretly grateful. Option C, he's in shock and doesn't quite understand what's happening. So far, that's going to be the best option because it's like he sees all the things happening, but as we mentioned, he's not really having an emotional response. He just kind of can't fully fathom that it's actually happening, that all these people that he spent his life with are being forced to leave with their small bundles of belongings. And then lastly, he's angry that his fellow community members are being treated unfairly, probably, but he can't really even like fully understand what's happening here. So again, option C is going to be the best option. What tone is created from the description of the setting? The streets resembled fairgrounds deserted in haste. There was a little of everything: brief suitcases, briefcases, bags, knives, dishes, banknotes, papers, faded portraits. All the things one had planned to take along and finally left behind. They had ceased to matter. Open rooms everywhere. Gaping doors and windows looked out into the void. It all belonged to everyone, since it no longer belonged to anyone. It was there for the taking, an open tomb, a summer sun. So our options are the tone is either playful and whimsical, foreboding and mysterious, violent and nostalgic, or empty and isolated. Tone. So think about the emotion associated here. Even though it says that word fairground, it's not playful or whimsical, right? There's a sense of kind of the impending doom, like something's off here. Option B is foreboding and mysterious. Foreboding is when you know that something bad is about to happen, like you have that feeling. And then mysterious, of course, you don't really know what's going on or why, but you just have that kind of negative feeling from the foreboding aspect. C, violent and nostalgic. Nostalgic is when you're looking back on memories from the past very fondly. There's nothing here violent, even though there's a sense that something bad happened. And they're not quite looking on the past fondly. Empty and isolated, yes, but between D and B, the real thing is that it's a sense of impending doom. So it's not just empty, it's empty and it's bad. It's making them question or making Ellie question, okay, this is something bad happening here. What is going on? So the option there should be B. Then, specifically, which line from the text supports the setting as being foreboding and mysterious? Your options are The street resembled a fairgrounds deserted in haste. There was a little of everything: suitcases, briefcases, bags, knives, dishes, banknotes, papers, faded portraits. All the things one planned to take along and finally left behind, or they had ceased to matter. Option A is going to say the fairgrounds deserted in haste. Again, fairgrounds, we get the impression that there was something happy going on here. People were going around their lives. Deserted in haste, left behind in a mad rush. That usually is going to clue us into the fact that something bad is happening here, and we don't quite know why. So that ties into our word mysterious. Deserted ties into the word foreboding because it's going to imply that it was something bad. Option B, there's a little of everything. That's kind of just describing what's going on. That doesn't necessarily carry a feeling with it just in that quote by itself. In the context, the greater context, it does. But that one sentence by itself could be taken in a number of ways. It could be positive, it could be negative, or it could be neutral. See all the things one planned to take along and finally left behind. This one is probably the next best option because we don't know why the people had to leave them behind, or why they had originally had to take them in the first place. However, when we talk about that word deserted from option A, that's going to be a really strong word choice, and that's going to most closely tie into foreboding. So far, option A still keeps the best answer. And then D, they had ceased to matter. We just don't have a whole lot of information from that one, so it's not going to be option D. So again, our best option here is option A. Which line from the text best supports the description of the setting as being foreboding and mysterious? Again, that same question, just a different portion of the text. My father was crying. It was the first time I saw him cry. I had never thought it possible. As for my mother, she was walking, her face a mask, without a word, deep in thought. I looked at my little sister, Zipporah, her blonde hair neatly combed, her red coat over her arm, a little girl of 7. On her back, a bag too heavy for her to carry. She was clenching her teeth. She already knew it was useless to complain. Here and there, the police were lashing out with their clubs. Faster! I had no strength left. The journey had just begun, and I already felt so weak. And again, we're looking for a sentence that supports the text, that supports the setting as being foreboding and mysterious. A, as for my mother, as for my mother, she was walking, her face a mask, without a word, deep in thought. I looked at my little sister, Zipporah, her blonde hair neatly combed, her red coat over her arm, a little girl of 7. And then lastly, here and there, the police were lashing out with their clubs. Faster! So the line here that best supports the sentence, the setting, we want to look for something that gives us a sense of not totally knowing what's happening, but knowing that it's going to be a bad thing. And if you're a child and you're looking over at your mom and you see that her face is a mask, that sounds like she's trying to mask her emotions. She's trying to hide her emotions. Usually, that would be to try to protect your child. Without a word, deep in thought. Clearly, she's concerned about what's going on. Her mind is kind of racing and is maybe somewhere else. So far, option A is our best. I looked at my little sister, Zipporah, her blonde hair neatly combed, her red coat over her arm, a little girl of 7. Out of context, this doesn't really give us a sense that it's foreboding and mysterious. Again, that sentence by itself doesn't tell us that it's foreboding and mysterious. Here and there, the police were lashing out with their clubs faster. That is going to be pretty violent, but it's not necessarily mysterious or foreboding. So our best option is option A. Now, our next concept is going to be imagery. Imagery is going to play a large role when we talk about tone because imagery is literally the pictures that are created in our mind when we read a description. And authors do this through the senses. They appeal to our sense of sight, touch, taste, smell, or sound. So, for example, if we're looking at this following paragraph, it says, the synagogue resembled a large railroad station, baggage and tears. The altar was shattered, the wall coverings shredded, the walls themselves bare. There were so many of us we could hardly breathe. The 24 hours we spent there were horrendous. The men were downstairs, the women upstairs. It was Saturday, the Sabbath, and it was as though we were to attend services. Forbidden to go outside, people relieved themselves in a corner. Now, we use this to talk about imagery, one, because you can literally picture the synagogue. The synagogue is a Jewish temple. And then you can kind of feel the feeling of being surrounded by so many people, being separated. And then that last sentence, people relieved themselves in the corner. For 24 hours, that's going to create a very particular smell as well. So our options are the cage-like imagery contributes to an impressive and animalistic mood, or the cage-like imagery contributes to a cold and depressing mood, or the religious imagery contributes to a mood of salvation, or the religious imagery contributes to a mood of hatred and fear. Between the two, you'll notice that A and B both say cage-like imagery, and C says religious imagery. Even though they're in a synagogue, there's not a whole lot going on there that's religious. For example, they're not talking about people praying or doing the things that are usually associated with religion. So that means that the cage like imagery is going to be most accurate. And if you think about it, it sounds correct, right? They're all being shoved in there. They're separated between men and women. They literally have to use the bathroom in a corner. It sounds like they're being forced to be animals in a zoo. So between being cold and depressing and oppressive and animalistic, the best option is going to be A, oppressive and animalistic. Yes, it is cold and depressing, but it is that because they're being treated like animals, because they're being oppressed. So therefore, A is going to be the best answer. And again, similar option here, the same question. How does the author's use of imagery establish the mood? And it says, night, no one was praying for the night to pass quickly. The stars were but sparks in the immense conflagration that was consuming us. Were this conflagration to be extinguished one day, nothing would be left in the sky but extinct stars and unseeing eyes. A conflagration is basically a big fire which destroys an entire piece of land or property. So they talk about the sparks from the immense conflagration, from the giant fire that was consuming us. So they talk about this imaginary fire literally consuming and burning people. And if you remember, the word Holocaust comes from literally the burning of a people. Were this conflagration to be extinguished one day, nothing would be left in the sky but extinct stars and unseeing eyes. Our options here for the imagery are A, the fiery imagery creates a pained and ominous mood, or The fiery imagery creates a celebratory and festive mood, or the sky imagery creates a calming and relieved mood, or the sky imagery creates a bitter and resentful mood. Again, our options between A and B are both fiery, and then C and D both have to do with sky imagery. Now, you'll notice that yes, it is talking about the sky. However, that word conflagration is literally a fire. So, what you picture is kind of a sky on fire. So, fiery is going to be our best option. Then we either have a pained and ominous mood or a celebratory and festive mood. They're definitely not celebrating. And ominous is again that feeling that something bad is going to happen, like the word foreboding. So A is going to be our best option here.